We're going to be talking about the UN's development programs and emphases in Georgia. What are you emphasizing? What are your current priorities? And do you anticipate that they'll shift with respect to development anytime soon?
Well, we did something unusual. We asked the people what they thought the development priorities were. I guess the unusual part is we then followed it. A number of occasions before where we said, okay, fine, these are the priorities, but we'll do something completely different. The three: jobs, education, health, good governance, and also what we would call in shorthand disaster risk reduction, but they of course, our constituents put it slightly differently, and they said, a safer environment, a more secure environment. Georgia's, as you very well know, is an ex-Soviet country, and so into a transition phase where everybody's really looking forward. Georgia has a part of Georgia which seceded to some extent, Abkhazia, another one, South Ossetia. And it's all about building up relationships. So a safer environment is also includes, and it was interesting, is having a better understanding with the people in Abkhazia and South Ossetia, which was developing community links, developing trust, developing confidence. And that was sort of kind of interesting, I thought, was lumped into this.
A bit more of an expansive view of security then.
Yeah, exactly. You can take disaster risk reduction for what it is, which is, as I say, to eliminate. You do risk mapping, traditional methodology, and then you say, okay, typically these are, it may be technological, it may be environmental, it may be chemical, it may be natural disasters, it may be man-made disasters. But it was a bit, so that was the sort of traditional methodology, but it's a bit beyond that. They said, okay, we want to live in safe communities, and by safe communities, they meant communities that got on with each other, and so this harmony aspect, which I thought was unusual. I haven't seen it so much everywhere else.
And it seems to me that would sort of invite the UN into some politically sensitive conversations about what the future of Georgia looks like. Are you able to play that sort of neutral broker role when it comes to these sort of separatist parts of the country and the main block of the population?
Well, it's a good question. We have a slightly easier life because there's after the 2008 war, there was something called the Medvedev-Sarkozy Agreement, and which led to the Geneva International Discussions, which are discussions which look at mainly the political part. So in a sense, the UN has a representative who has a whole team who deal with that political part. So we're fortunate because we can then rely on them to tackle these issues. But I think what's really important is that there is a really clear understanding between the political side and the development side as to how we can help the political side and how it can work vice versa. I come from a humanitarian background, and I'm patently aware that absent a political solution, half the time we're just basically making do. We're making up for the problems which wouldn't otherwise exist had that political solution be found. Cornelia Samaruga, who was the president of ICRC a few years ago, said that humanitarian intervention was a fig leaf to cover various protagonists' embarrassment, which their inability to actually agree anything politically. But we're not naive. We realize that if there was a political solution, our lives would be far easier. We wouldn't have to be providing the type of very basic recovery and sometimes even humanitarian assistance we're doing. But to make sure that we don't put the successes, the results of development work in a path of a political cyclone, and so then you get involved in arguments, you get involved in discussions. I'll give you one very good example. We were talking. There's a line of separation between Abkhazia and the rest of Georgia, and kids need to go along one side of it, alongside the river, in order to try to get to schools. And we proposed a minibus. It was a pretty simple idea that they could transport these kids who were having to walk sometimes 2 hours in really, really bad conditions. And perfectly practical got involved in political discussions, and people said, well, they shouldn't be going there, and they shouldn't be going. They should get school where they go to school where they, one side said they should go to school where schools are being provided, despite the fact that it was in a language they may not have been able to understand. And other people were saying, no, they need to have freedom of movement, and it became very political. In the end, the minibus never happened, which I think was unfortunate. The kids are still stumping through the mud now as we speak. As a result of that. So I think, well, it cuts both ways. We have to be aware of the politics to make sure that we, in the end, support we don't contradict a political solution. And yet, on the other hand, we have to know that the neutrality and the independence of these programs is primordial, because otherwise they run the risk of not actually happening.